It's the OVGA podcast.
So, I mean, the website underwent a big change. We basically went from cloud hosting, which is hosting from our provider, to being self-hosting now. That required quite a lot of sort of investment and development. And I want to thank you guys for chipping in and making that happen. I couldn't have done it without you. But we sort of transitioned from sort of being on the cloud to now being self-hosted, which means we could do so much more on the website side of things. We could upload more things. We can develop more apps, add more functionality. And at the same time, in the long run, it's going to cost a lot less maintaining it. So it's sort of we're almost there. We're not done yet. The developer's working out a lot of sort of upgrades, a lot of things when we transitioned over to the self-hosting didn't work. So he's just working through that. But I think in the next month or so, everything should be back to normal. And that means, Sanford, you can be back up and running, adding the artist biographies on there.
Yeah, and so you really did just jump right into that one, huh, Ibrahim? So
yeah, straight to it.
So we're talking about, of course, right, the originalvideogameart.com website, where we have our ability to upload images from our collections, our own notes, additional comments about the pieces. People can comment on them, but then the database side, right, all of our artist bios and things like that. So this is the first video we've shot since June. And so we're in December 2025 now. It's been about 6 months. And so during that time, the website's been down or under construction. It's back up now, but doesn't have its full functionality, as Ibrahim was saying. And so as we get back together for the first time and all this time, wanted to kind of, give an update on where things were. And hopefully that's something we all start putting a little more time into. I know I've got pieces I need to add. I'm going to keep goading Dan for you to add some pieces. Ibrahim, I know you'll do it without being prompted.
Yeah, Dan's been framing quite a lot of pieces.
Thrown under the bus. That's fine. I don't mind. Well, look, it's good to see you guys again. It's been too long. It's nice to get together. I guess we'll get into some of the reasons for all that and so on. And at the end of the day, I think we're all just needing to make it work with our schedule, and so we'll probably do it kind of whenever things pop up that are of interest. It's been a bit of a quiet 6 months too, right? And so that hasn't really led into any reasons for like a hot take on something. But we do have a couple new episodes planned, so we'll look forward to doing that soon. And anybody that hasn't seen, I was on Josh Byerly and Matt Rose's Video Game Collectors podcast a little while ago. If you want to check out sort of a half, it was a 2-hour episode, so I can't call it a half episode, but a lot of that episode was about art too. So, for a fix, if you were missing us because we hadn't been around.
And so I think some of this, right, is getting an episode in before the end of 2025, in part to kind of look back on, because we haven't done one over 6 months, but kind of what has been happening or what hasn't been happening. And so almost like a 2025 recap, because we know the three of us are all very plugged in to the hobby and what's coming up, what's being sold, what's being talked about. But that if you're someone who's more casually kind of tracking original video game art, that there's not a good place to be like, hey, what happened this last year? So we thought that would be kind of the premise of starting to run through what's come up this year. At the end, at least for me, sharing something I picked up in the last year, and then kind of wherever our conversation takes us, whether it's about the market, whether it's looking forward for next year. But I figured that would be kind of a year wrap episode that we could put together.
Yeah, so why don't we start with the beginning of the year? Mr. Boozash, had a nice little purchase from Galactic Gallery, which is Ben Stevens, who represents Drew Struzan over in Texas, I think the gallery is. And I guess he had posted some surreptitiously in a little folder put a couple of pictures, and Jeremy, being annoyingly plugged into that kind of thing, managed to see those pieces and figured something out for the lot of them. So congratulations to Jeremy on working out a deal. And that included a couple of interesting NES covers. There was Legendary Wings. Remind me what the other one was. What was
the
it
other one
besides
was
Legendary
Mickey
Wings?
Mousecapade, but it didn't
Yeah.
go to Jeremy.
Oh, yeah, but that wasn't bought by Jeremy. That was bought by someone else.
So before even before we jump into like what the pieces were, like some of this were like I was itching a little bit, right? Or maybe a little hot under the collar. Is like the artist where a lot of these pieces came from is a fantastic artist, Justin Carroll, and so Justin Carroll is one half of Hamagami Carroll, which is now a large firm that's been doing video game work for years. I think it's, I can't recite at the top of my head things that they've done recently, but a lot of big budget kind of titles. They've been very established in the space for a long time. And I think both John Hamagami and Justin Carroll were really fantastic illustrators in their own right. And so it probably would have been around 94, 95, 96 that they found this firm together and start, in addition to working on big franchises like Warcraft and StarCraft and other things for Blizzard, they each had their own careers before then. And so Justin Carroll is someone that, Dan and I had talked to at different points over the years. And so I had the lucky inside information of knowing from Justin that he was going to send his stuff to Galactic Gallery. And so I kind of knew this in that October 2024 timeframe. And I was like, okay, great. He's going to send it in. That decision's been made. I presume they've got a contract, whatever it is. Fine. I know at least there will be an opportunity to buy something. And so being familiar with Galactic Gallery and Drew Struzan and how those pieces are presented, I thought, well, okay, surely they'll get posted on the website. There will be an email that goes out. They'll be presented. They'll be priced. There'll be some kind of that's what I expected, right? That's how the Struzan pieces are. That's how other stuff on the website is. And so as Dan gets into the way they were kind of surreptitiously posted was, all of a sudden there was the social media accounts for Galactic Gallery. You've got their Instagram, their Facebook, they have the website itself. And you've kind of got a post on the website that mentions an event coming up, doesn't show any of the pieces. And then you've got a folder on the website that's got 40 pieces of artwork and 9 of them are video game related.
That's a public folder?
Yeah, it's just that
public, everyone can see.
It's an album, right? So you've got the Facebook event for what's going to be a kind of, I'm losing the words here, but a showcase of Justin Carroll's artwork, or if Hamagami, or both of them, right? Hamagami Carroll, their artwork going to be displayed. They did toy work for Toy Biz, some of the Marvel stuff, some Spider-Man, some Wolverine, some X-Men. And so they're going to put together an in-person event in Texas where the gallery is. You can come and see the pieces and buy them. And so they have the event on Facebook, and then there's a folder of images added to the event. Within that folder is all the images of the game artwork. And so, by the time I see it, it's been 2 or 3 days. And as Dan touched off, Jeremy was quick to the trigger. And in time, made his own post and shared some of the things. But, by the time I'm emailing, right, no, those are already sold. I'm like, well, how is it sold? You just, were they priced? Who bought them? What's going on?
How did this happen? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? They're sold. The event's in 3 weeks. What are you talking about? Yeah. And you haven't listed anything. You haven't emailed anything. There's just a sneaky folder that you have to search the website. Basically, you've been booze-ashed at this point.
And so it's.
But I assume these were taken on consignment, so the artist Justin would have okayed any deal that was done. Because this is the sort of first time I hear the full story.
And Sanford remembers it in so much more detail than I do, which speaks to like the ouch, right?
I think what it was, there's an agreement between the artist, the consigner, to the gallery. As part of that, he has prices that he wants for his things. And so at the point that Jeremy or anyone else is reaching out, so long as the price that Justin was asking for the pieces was met, he's happy as the consigner. Ben Stevens, as the guy who runs Galactic Gallery, is certainly happy that, hey, I've got a quick sale, was able to even sell it before the event. I'm sure, like, if you take a step back from our like little niche and how we view it, they're like, that's a huge success. They're like, hey, the event's in 3 weeks, the event's in whatever time, and I've already sold X number of the pieces. When other people are walking around the gallery, they see a little red dot showing it's been sold. There's a whole
it makes for a good event. That's right. Everybody can see that there's been a lot of interest in them. They've sold, etc. The one thing we haven't talked about, actually, we mentioned the 2 NES covers, but there's also 6 Atari covers for some specific publisher. I forget what it is. Coconuts. And
it was Telus is.
Yeah, there you go.
And like it's not a publisher that I knew beforehand. But man, Justin's
wasn't there a PC cover also?
Yeah, there was a Street Fighter for DOS. So the DOS release of the first Street Fighter game was among the pieces that surfaced and that Jeremy has ended up with and shared. And so, I mean, as we talk about what's going on in the hobby, to have 6 covers surface for the Atari 2600, 2
is a
NES
big deal
box
because they never come up. You never see those. There's very few extant. So another 6 is it's kind of big news.
And just him having worked on Capcom, the pieces present well. I think like Dan and I, we knew about Legendary Wings, but up until this got posted, I didn't know that Justin was the artist for Mickey Mousecapade. And we looked at it. We looked at the image, the style. We're like, okay, who worked on Disney? Who could this have been? No, this doesn't look like a regular Disney artist. And we're going through and like we were talking to the guy. We knew it the whole time, but just as you're dealing with artists that did something so long ago, until they have it in front of them, until they found it at a storage, they're not going to remember. And I guess we probably never thought to.
You're going to ask them what they did, and they're going to give you an incomplete list. And so, until, like you said, it's physically in front of them, they don't remember they did it.
Yeah.
So,
but a good sort of exciting sort of thing to pop up in, this year. So that's nice. I mean, if that happens every year, something comes out of the woodwork like that. That's brilliant.
Well, I think that's what. But
congrats to sort of all parties involved there.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we kind of need to and want to see, because what will keep coming throughout this conversation and other episodes is like, where is new artwork coming from, right? Like, what is there that hasn't been discovered? And we have a decent pulse on like what we own and what other collectors own, and we kind of know in our heads what hasn't surfaced, but that doesn't make it any more likely that it will surface or that'll happen. So like anything of this nature is huge. And so it's exciting that it happened, even if, got beat out a little bit. And Jeremy's been a very good sport about things, and he and I have talked back and forth. And
we'll break his legs later.
Yeah. Well, he's got him up across the border, so you're in the best position to,
Hey! Don't dox me here. I need to be able to sneak in and break his legs when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go for it, Dan.
No, I was just gonna say, so so that's what happened with Justin Carroll and everything, and so that's all been private. And if somebody listening to this is, I guess, interested in one of those Atari pieces, I think Jeremy was fielding inquiries at one point in time, so kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah,
I don't know if it still is, but
they're really good paintings. Like,
they are.
You really take aside
nice.
Like Telus is, and is it? It's not going to be the same level of significance as the Atari published games, but shockingly, among all the non-Atari publishers that there were in that period, so little has surfaced. And they're big. They're really big paintings, about 30 inches, 26 inches tall for each of them. They're big. and Justin is a really fantastic painter. And this would have been
Yeah.
82 kind of is the time frame for these. And so, yeah, I'm sure Jeremy's posted some. The images are kind of around online from Galactic Gallery, but they're all impressive works. And I'm sure, yeah, Jeremy be to the extent someone has interest, fielding a little bit, though I'm sure he's going to want to hang on to them as well.
Right. Yeah, and then the second sort of interesting pod of artwork to kind of come to the market was the Peringer estate, of course, kind of in the middle of the year. We had an episode on that and the pieces it sold and whatever, and the biggest price having been for the Bowser Mario N64 ad that sold. How much did that sell for? 28 grand?
27 and a half.
27. Yeah.
27 and a half. Okay, yeah. So solid price, I think, for an ad. Like on the one hand, it's it's Mario and it's N64, so it's got a ton of appeal that way. On the other hand, Mario was about yay big on the painting. It was all Bowser. So I think that plays it. There's a lot of positives, and then the negative is that Mario's barely there. So the price made sense, I think, and there were some solid prices kind of on some of those pieces. Some surprise to the upside, some maybe a little bit to the downside, and overall it was probably a reasonable range, I think.
I think what part of what I want good to bring up that those sales and talking about it almost more so than the sales or the results themselves is kind of this theme of where is artwork coming from, what is it that leads it to come to public market, right? And so one of those sources is going to be estates, right? And
100%.
so we had I think it was January 2023 in the signature is when some of the Mick McGinty pieces were kind of coming up as part of that big, we had about 80 or 100 art lots in one standalone session at the time. And I think Mick McGinty's were a part of that. There was the Die Hard arcade that I have. Ibrahim, you got the College Slam basketball.
I bought one in there as well.
You got the tank.
Pitball or whatever it's called. And the mass destruction with the tank as well. Estates for sure. And I mean, all of these artists, unfortunately, for the most part, they're getting up there in age, and so unfortunately, it's a fact of life that one of the way some of them are sitting on some artwork, and some of it will hit the market through estate, sadly. But I don't know how else to say it. It's not a nice way for something to come to market, but ultimately, it's going to be one of the sources.
And I think I think what it becomes a good opportunity to talk about the artist too. So like when we had Chris on for the podcast around March, we got to talk about Chris and his background, but then Chris kind of was able to become a proxy for Peringer, sharing Chris's stories of meeting him and how they met and Peringer's artwork, but then having being able to these pieces came to auction in May for the bulk of them, then a little bit July, August, September, a couple pieces each auction, but maybe 10, 11 pieces were in May. So Chris, and I are able to talk in March, kind of previewing, yes, they're going to Heritage. Here are the pieces. Let's talk through them. Let's look at the details. And so, I know Stephen Peringer's widow is in the Facebook group now, and it's kind of touching when you see her reacting or commenting when people are getting things framed and sharing them. And so I think a lot of families probably don't always get to quite see the recognition, because the work that these artists did for games was 2 to 5 years, maybe 10 years, but they're just a small piece of someone's overall 30 or 40 year commercial illustration career. And I think the artists themselves don't always know that how much people are going to care and appreciate that artwork, or that it mattered to people 30 years ago, and that the big titles, sure, people know about, but if you've just done C and B tier titles, really great artwork, even if they're well loved, you may not, if your name isn't known, people may not reach out to you to give you that recognition for what you've done. And so, it's been like, even though the pieces that came from Peringer to auction weren't the highest tier, things had been sold beforehand. It led to more discussion of his works, more
I believe
sharing of
that's
his
called
pieces.
being Chamberlain.
But even long before him, right? Some members who may be on this very episode, right?
That's called being Mareskid.
Yeah, Mareskid. Yeah, it's another guy out in Ohio might have got something too, right? But it's maybe I'm meandering, right? But it's for a hobby like this, seeing these opportunities to have pieces surface, to get discussed, for that. I don't know. It's nice to
It's
see it
nice. It
happen.
shows it's nice. It shows the appreciation, that collectors have for these artists. Even as you said, some have just only done work for 2-3 years. And funny enough, just yesterday, Dave posted his Super RC artwork he bought from the Peringer estate, and he has the actual display that it goes with. So that was really nice. He showed the display and the artwork. Side by
Did you buy
side.
that from the estate or from you, Sanford?
It came from
your
me.
name was dropped in the post.
So yeah, I got it from the estate, and then was able to sell it to Dan, or not to Dan, sorry, to Dave.
So that's called being a dirty flipper.
Yeah,
that's what that's called.
Maybe, but I will say, but I shared this before too. If not for Dave Marino, we never would have identified what that artwork was for.
Yeah,
right.
And that was something that when Chris came on in the podcast, I don't know if we talked. I know I told Chris privately, "Hey, here is a picture of how the standee was used," which gave Heritage the information to then share that it was for a standee, and yes, confirming it was RC Pro-Am. But some of those early advertising illustrations are quite obscure, and it just happened that Dave had posted a picture of a shelf with multiple standees and displays and things, and amongst those is the RC Pro-Am piece. I say, oh my gosh, this image was on Peringer's website. We assumed it was RC Pro-Am, but never really could confirm or know what it was for. And so, seeing Dave post that to give me the information to share with Chris and the family to make sure Heritage got it right, it felt like bringing it full circle was like, uniting the artwork with the standee, which is also like fun itself. And then when Dave posts it, you see just how, and that's a big standee. That's like 21 inches on the standee. And so the painting itself is well above 30 inches. And it's cool to see the pairing.
Yeah.
Well played.
Yeah. So, so in this discussion so far, I mean, we kind of talked about, the fact that estates are one source of new pieces coming to market. What we haven't really talked about is, or we've talked about it privately, but we haven't talked about it kind of on air yet. And so maybe let's dive into that, is that, similar to the way that, the overall sealed game market is you could, there's some interesting dynamics going on, and I think they're kind of going on with respect to the artwork too, because it's all kind of interconnected. But the sealed game market, you can see consignment volume shrinking because money is kind of leaked out of the hobby a little bit with respect to sealed games. There's a lot of money kind of flying around in cards, and it seems like people are just kind of hitching their wagon to that for the time being, and kind of drawing away, which is kind of nice on my end, because I've been able to buy some things in the last year that were kind of unreasonable before in terms of price, or at least more than I wanted to pay. So we see consignment volume shrinking. We see the minimum fees at HA, going up. So there's going to be less, low ticket games. So the weekly consignment volumes will be down for sure. And you can see it happening kind of week over week over week. The number of items is going down. And even in the showcase and signatures too, like the totals both for dollars and number of lots, are kind of shrinking. And so, I think that the game crowd as it stands is not motivated to send in their best stuff right now. I mean, you can see it. The last signature only had 2 or 3 kind of bigger value games. The upcoming signature, if you look at the list of what's kind of previewed so far, not really any huge heavy hitters there. And I think in terms of like the artwork, it's sort of the same boat, right? Like there's a good market that's been established for kind of low to middle and pieces, on Heritage. So that's nice. It's liquid. Art gets into people's hands. Sellers are happy. Buyers are happy. That's nice. But nobody's motivated to like send in their best stuff right now, and I don't really see that kind of changing in the next little while per se. I'll kick it over to you guys for your thoughts on that, and then I'll probably have some thoughts afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where the finds that, and you track the sealed stuff more than I do, but as I look into different Facebook groups, I think that the recurring trend is that the sealed games that are getting sent in are often new finds where someone has had to put up, 6 figures to buy.
Sometimes estates too.
Sometimes estates, right? But someone is still putting up a substantial amount of money within that calendar year and is then motivated to recoup some of that or most of it by sending it to auction, right? And so like you have those, there is a motivation factor when it's a brand new purchase versus, hey, someone's had this in their collection for 15 years, right? And if you've owned a piece of artwork or a sealed game for 10 or 15 years and you don't have a need for money now and the market conditions aren't motivating you to do so, right, you're going to see less of those consignments. But I think what we're seeing in artwork is when they are getting consigned, right, it's from an estate or it's circumstantial, right? Like there were a number of items, piece of artwork that came back up to Heritage over 2025 that had been purchased from 2020 to 2022 by a member of the group, and life circumstances led that person to need to consign a number of those items, and so they came back up, wasn't motivated to it, but had a reason and needed to. And so absent that, where are the consignments coming from, right? So it's going to be that life situation, estates, or what I would love to see for artwork is something new is discovered, right? Like when Ghoul Patrol came up, this SNES box art Ghoul Patrol came up a year or two ago, right? That was coming directly from the artist himself, and we didn't otherwise yet identify who that was.
Yeah,
I don't know the sequence there, right? But he had the piece. Heritage reached out to him, or vice versa. I'm not sure, and that kind of unknown piece came to light, right? And
there will be some of those. Like there are artists out there like him that have stuff. There's also artists out there like him that have stuff, and collectors out there that have stuff too. I mean, we talked about the fact that Sirocco, probably Sirocco, given that it's an Italian name, had sold a lot of his artwork at comic conventions in the 90s, or 80s, 90s. For not very much money at the time. So, like somebody's sitting on those. They just don't know that they're sitting on anything. And when and more of those will come to light.
But if you're sort of a collector of video game art and you're looking to sell, a part of your collection or 1 or 2 pieces, and you look at the sort of public sales and then you look at the private sales. I mean, the private sales, the market is a lot stronger. The private sales, you can get the number you want. If it doesn't sell for that number, the piece is still yours. If you invested a lot in it, it's still yours. So I think seeing those big pieces, I highly doubt you're going to get a collector consigning those. So estates or coming from the artist is the only way I see those sort of big pieces emerging.
Yeah, the big pieces making it to market will be from fresh finds. I mean, look, that's the case with Prince of Persia, right? Like, as of right now, that's the most that one has gone for in Heritage. And where did that come from? I mean, that came from, the artist, finding out about, well, I guess actually Kevin Nealon consigned it.
Yeah, it was the model.
Yeah.
The model
Yeah.
who was
Yeah.
the central figure of the piece had received it from the artist, years ago.
It's funny. Did we actually cover that?
I think we did at the time.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I think Kevin Nealon was the model and had owned it was gifted it to him by Robert Florchak.
Yes,
the artist, and then Kevin consigned it. Heritage had approached him to do like a video, saying, "Hey, I'm Kevin Nealon, and this is my piece," but he turned it down, unfortunately.
I mean, I think one thing that we might not have talked about back then, I think it's probably fine now at this point, right? Is that like part of the reason it came to auction was, there were multiple private parties interested.
Right.
And as it became to, among those private parties making offers, I think through Florzak, it wasn't even direct to the owner.
It was
the artist, right?
Yeah.
To kind of say, enough to say, look, here's what it could be.
2/3 of the people on this call.
Yes, yeah. I think I was a middleman between someone else on here and the artist was the middleman between himself and Kevin. It was a funny situation.
But it was enough where it made sense to kind of say, well,
we suggested it, I think.
Maybe
we suggested
to send it to auction.
Yeah.
And I think it did.
I'm trying to remember why we suggested that.
Yeah, well, it was basically getting to a number where you're just like, they just kept on coming back with like a higher offer. And we were just like, well, I just want to give a number and be done with it. Right. I don't want this ping pong back and forth. Otherwise just take it to auction and we'll just fight it out.
Yes, because there already was an auction. It was just a private auction.
Exactly.
By email. That's
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the benefit, though, as you just touched on, Dan, is that like we now have this public sale, right?
Yeah.
And I think like otherwise it's kind of hard to get those, and the high quality piece and the tier and all that.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's time to jump into that, but it's interesting, right? Because on the one hand, like on the public side, like it's hard to see short of like, an estate sale or something like that, or a big new find, or somebody bring something they've been sitting on, into the light that, they didn't know was something. And so they want to consign it. Short of that, it's hard to see where the big public sales are going to come from kind of in 2026 as we look forward to the next year. But, the state of the market privately is, kind of been good in 2025. There's been some exciting developments. There's been a number of six-figure sales privately. And unfortunately, we get into the area where there's only so much we can say because, it's not our information to share. But I guess one we can talk about, because it was on the group kind of early in the year, was Aliens versus Predator, which, I think the asking price was
listed at $250. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I believe it was posted that it sold for less than that, the amount being unclear. But, I can confirm that it was, a six-figure amount. So, that was the first one in the year. That was a good way to kind of kick things off. And then there was a number of other ones that have kind of happened during the course of the year. There was one at a couple $100,000. There was one at over $500,000. There was one at it was part trade, part cash, but a six-figure amount. There's one a little shy of six figures. So, there's been some good stuff kind of happening. And it reflects the fact that at the end of the day, like, we all collect this because it's wonderful material. And if somebody has the cash and it's a great piece that they want to own, like there's a market there for it at good numbers. But at the same time, is somebody going to take a flyer and consign? I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. I think people aren't going to risk their best stuff at the end of the day.
I think, and you have a better insight and awareness to some of the private sales than Ibrahim or I do. You know, I have some awareness of bits and pieces of things. And I know like one factor that comes up is we kind of even talks amongst ourselves of the you know, when was the sale, when are you getting paid, what are the details, right? Is there is a lot more flexibility in some of the private sales, right? If you have someone that you trust on the other side and you've committed to it, you agree to a number,
Yeah.
that may not happen as a wire transfer the next day, right? And you say, okay, let's pay over this period or increments of this much down. That, like, I know if I were to consider certain larger purchases, it would probably have to be with some kind of a payment plan versus dropping it all at once. And so with a site like Heritage, if you communicate ahead of time with them, you might be able to make payments over 6 months so long as you put down X amount. And the fee is reasonable, but it takes a lot of like commitment ahead of time to say, yes, I really want that piece. I'm going to get it. I'm going to set this payment plan. Now I'm going to hustle on the back end to have everything ready because it's going to be due to Heritage. Versus privately, you know, so long as you have rapport and trust with the other person, you can have a longer time horizon as needed, or allow them to finish up another purchase before they make whatever level of payments with you, either as a buyer or a seller.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, you know, there's something to be said, even as the buyer, for like the certainty of being able to transact at X price or whatever, even if it's high or low or indifferent. You know I was purchasing some sealed games from somebody a few months back, and I mean, I probably paid as much or maybe even a little more than what they might have gotten for at auction, but I just wanted the deal. I just wanted it done. I didn't want to have them go to auction and maybe I get them, maybe I don't. I have to wait 3 months. You know, I didn't want to deal with the BS. I just wanted to have it happen. And so there is something to be said for that. But you're absolutely right that flexibility of terms, you know, can make bigger deals happen too. That's a big plus too.
Also, there is something to say where, you know, as a sort of purchaser of a piece, like privately, it's sometimes nice that the piece isn't offered publicly, so like less eyes are sort of aware of it. Sometimes it's an artwork that's never surfaced and it's being offered to you, so you're like, oh my god, one, you know, thank you very much for coming to me, and two, you know, it's an opportunity most likely to get a really, really great piece that's going to be somebody's grail piece, to say the word. And you know, to have that opportunity, you know, speaks volumes. So if you can have that sort of opportunity to purchase a piece like that, then paying up is sometimes it's like, you know what, well, it's worth it. I get the convenience of sort of having this piece, you know, not going through the auction. It's not being sort of publicly offered, and it'll stay in my collection and nobody needs to know about it. And sometimes that's worth it.
Yeah, and it's funny, you know, everybody sort of wants everything to be transparent all the time, and for there to be lots of public data points so that there's confidence in the numbers and stuff. And I get that, and yet when you talk it through, like, there's reasons for things not to always be public at the end of the day, and it just kind of is what it is. Because even like, I know that when I've sold things and I want to make something public, a lot of times the buyer will shy away from that, right? So sometimes it's the seller, sometimes it's the buyer, but it's usually somebody wanting to like put the damper on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy thing to just, especially nowadays with social media, to be like, oh, I have a piece that's worth 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, and it's like, oh, really? You know, you're just going to have people sort of, one, DMing you, two, bugging you, and three, asking questions. You know, how are you able to afford this? And you know, you sometimes you just don't want that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I still think it'll be, and you know, it's seeing more of the hobby and awareness of deals and watching in the Facebook group, which minor plug here. I mean, as we looked at what happened in 2025, we did hit 2,000 members in the group. And so, Dan, you started it back in 2018, right? And so I don't know, it feels like it's its own kind of milestone, right? As we look at, crossover members joining sometimes from other Facebook groups, from within the sealed groups or the art groups. We've seen some art dealers join the group as well. Like Tatiana came in recently, runs TD Art, and so kind of this growing awareness of the group and things. And so, almost kind of a side thought came to mind. We had that, and whatever we talked about ahead of time of that being its own mini milestone, that I do feel confident that the group has kind of grown and established itself. Was it in 2025 that you started your pinball group, Dan?
Yeah, it was, and I'm glad you bring that up, because actually, just to jump on that topic for 2 minutes, there is a sale in February of some of the art from the Bally archives. It's kind of, some of it had already been sold, kind of here and there, and this is kind of the remaining material, as I understand, and so
quite a lot of material, like.
Yeah, well, that's, and so as a buyer, I think that's going to be a great opportunity, because I don't, like, if I was Heritage or if I was the consignor, it's not how I would handle it. Like, I would put, 5, maybe 10, maybe pinball pieces in each, Heritage, probably the game, showcases or signatures or whatever, to kind of have a bit of a stream, to kind of build awareness, to build interest over a period of time. They're just jamming it all in one showcase. And, I think we saw, like, with the January 2023 game art auction, like that really doesn't work. That doesn't work, like, in a developing category anyway. So, I think there's going to be some good buying opportunities for people. So yeah, February 2026 is when that happens. So that'll be kind of fun. I mean, a lot of it is developmental material. There's not a ton of finals, but I think there is a few. So, I know there is a few. So, it'll be interesting to watch that auction too.
I think,
and speaking of, consignment material, I mean, I guess that's the other, like, this is coming from essentially, it's been passed through a few hands, but basically the Bally archives, and there's got to be some publisher archives out there too, on the game art side, that could make it to light one day too. And, that's all kind of a question mark, and, I guess we'll see, but, I'm sure there's a publisher or two out there that's got material that, they don't necessally need to keep when it becomes.
Can you send me their details?
Valuable. Yeah, so I can be faraged.
So, but I bring up the R group and then the pinball group almost as kind of a marker of hobby maturity. And so, like, I think it's there's been other Facebook groups I've seen started for other focuses of artwork that haven't caught on. Even some of the fantasy art groups and things, they're not quite as focused as, okay, this is art for video games. It's anything that's a fantasy painting, which has the upside of brand new paintings being done by wonderful established artists, his old book covers going back. But even as you look at, like, the general illustration art group, you've got decades of material with members of lots of different interests, and someone's like, here's something great from 1929, and I've got no interest whatsoever, right? And then you've got someone else posting pulps of that era or newer. You've got just artists themselves sharing their illustration work, but it's a little bit disjointed, right? Like, trying to catch it all under an illustration umbrella doesn't really work. And so seeing that the game art group is getting recognized, that if someone posts a video game, something, artwork or otherwise, in another group, someone will say, hey, go check out the game art group, whether it's us plugging it ourselves, but other people are bringing it up that we're not aware of, and we get 7 or 10 new members.
I think that's the word, awareness, and there is a lot more of that now. I mean, when I started, there just wasn't. There was sort of people talking about it on Nintendo Age, and Dan and Adam early on, but that was it. But now it's like you are aware that there is video game art. There is such a thing as original art for these packages, displays, and stuff. So there's a lot more awareness in the video game hobby for this. So which is great to see.
I think when it comes to like, say, sealed game collectors, there's more awareness of that because at the end of the day, stuff gets listed in those sealed game auctions, and so every auction, at the end of the auction, there's 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces, that they see and that they see sell, and they see the prices and stuff. So, you're absolutely right. That being said, I feel like it is, oh my gosh, like in terms of like game players and collectors as a whole, just like the tip of the iceberg in terms of awareness. I mean, that goes for sealed games even, I mean, there's still so many people that just don't even understand it's a thing, and doubly true for artwork. Doubly true.
I think what's fascinating, though, thinking about, because we just talked about both game art, but also pinball and pinball artwork, and there's this auction coming up, and whether it makes sense to have it all as one showcase or not. I think what stands out to me from the little bit that I know from the pinball side is that the art for pinball has had much greater focus on it for a longer period than video game art has, right? And so as you look at these annual, from my external view, right, as I look at these annual pinball conventions, there's one up in the Northeast in New England where like the artists are frequent guests of those every year, right? And it's a different artist or multiple artists. They're putting on slideshows and presentations talking about their art. To the extent that there's pinball podcasts, the artists are members on those, just like alongside other pinball guests. Whereas like, we have our art podcast, but otherwise, if not for us or our involvement, you don't have video gamers on their podcast talking about artwork, right? You have like the, God, was the worst box art one? God, I'm drawing a blank on it. AVGN, right? Like he touched on artwork as a gag, years ago, right? But like, otherwise, you don't really have artwork being discussed in a meaningful way. Whereas from the pinball side of things, amongst any of the guests that they would have on a Who's Who in Pinball, that really does include the artists, right? And they were credited. They worked directly for the companies, often rather than being freelancers.
And that is the big difference, because you talked earlier about the fact that, game artists a lot of the times, had this 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 at the most year window where they worked in game art and was part of a larger 40-year career. There are guys that worked 40 years in pinball, in pinball art. Kevin O'Connor and, Yossi and some others. So and they worked for the company. It's just, it's totally different, right? It's like, they're well known. They can directly speak to the development of the game, like, things that just, don't quite relate or correlate in the same way because they were directly part of the company.
And, I think, shit, I lost my train of thought. I think, what we're going to have to do? I think we're going to have to put together like a top 10 video game artists. Best.
Oh, no. Now we're mentioning it on air. So now we have to follow through with it.
Dang it.
Yeah. Thanks, Sanford. Yeah. We've been talking about doing that. And so now that we've put it out there into the airwaves, I guess it's going to happen.
Coming to you soon in 2026, 7.
But I mean, we joke, and I hope we do it. I hope we talk about it. But I mean, there's kind of like a top 3. We're not gonna not say names for the moment, right? Like a top 3, a top 5 that people outside of our small community kind of know, right? Certain names that have gotten talked about a little more than others. But after that top 3, after that top 5, who those artists are is really, really constrained to our hobby, to our niche. And I think that's different for pinball, where you can say, "Oh, I love that machine. I played it once at the we used to go pick up seafood in this place. They had it there in the corner, and this was the machine. And I remember the name. Let me look up the artist." Right? It's so easy to pull and grab that information and discover who that was.
It really is. Yeah. Internet pinball database. You can literally look up who the artists were on any particular machine. The only wrinkle is that, they don't differentiate in the credits between like playfield art versus backlash art. And sometimes those were different people on the same machine.
But I think as much as we know, and even in our community, who some of these top 10 would be, top 15, who these names are, that they're still fairly unknown names outside of this community. So I think that's something that, we had, Lee McLeod on as a guest. We did a Boris and Julie video earlier on in the podcast. I think there's artists that we're going to, beyond those, right, that would be good to talk about in some kind of format, right, through our podcast, otherwise videos on our YouTube channel. But I think just talking about that difference in recognition between game art and pinball art, I think that would be something that we who have that knowledge are in a good position to share a little bit, discuss.
Absolutely. But, it's funny when you bring it up, like, you're right that there's a big difference in recognition, and yet that recognition has been kind of on the player side, right? Like, in terms of the collector side, like, like people knew who these artists were and so on, knew what they illustrated, and there was a bit of a collector scene around the artwork, but there hasn't. I guess that was one of the goals of starting the pinball group was to just kind of get the people that are sort of far flung and don't have a communication channel that are into it kind of together under one roof, and to kickstart discussions and sharing and all that sort of thing. So
that's where I met Ibrahim. That's where I met Jeremy Buzash. It was like through our own Facebook group, right, where like.
Right.
Otherwise, I met Jeremy Smith because you introduced he and I over text. And so now we message and stuff. And that was before the group, or, in that same timeline. But through having the community, meeting other members. And it's been fun watching the pinball group, seeing names that are all new to me of members, and kind of seeing, this person's been in pinball for 20 years. Right. And just unknown, I don't follow the hobby. I don't track it the way you do. But I'm sure there are people that are brand new names to you that you didn't know that actually were interested in this stuff, right? And so that's
for
good
sure,
to see.
for sure. And I look forward to more of that. Kind of growing that the same way that we grew the game group, over the years. So that'll be fun to see.
So as we wrap up, one thought I had was kind of a show and tell of, whether things we picked up in 2025, or for each of us different reasons for a slower year. Or just sharing something that whether we got it in 2025 or not that we haven't shared before. But there's one piece, I thought it was two, but I'll just do one for today, of that I did pick up in 2025 that I haven't otherwise shared, that I think would be, I like the piece. It's worth doing. So we talked a little bit about Galactic Gallery and Justin Carroll. And so one piece that we haven't shown or discussed before that I've got here is a Justin Carroll piece for a Capcom DOS release called Sidearms. So Sidearms being a Capcom arcade title that then got this home port, right, home computer release for DOS. And Justin Carroll, who was doing artwork for Capcom in this period, including for NES stuff, which was about the same time or later than this piece. They're all within about a year of each other. Put this one together. And so luckily this is one that I bought through Galactic, through Ben Stevens. And part of it was because it's a little more, it's Capcom, it's early, purple box, I think. But it's a little more obscure, that like Justin and Ben didn't know what it was. So it didn't end up, because it wasn't identified, it didn't end up getting posted in that same Facebook album. Everything
Wasn't
that Buzash didn't get Buzash. And funny thing, Buzash saw this image. It was shown to him, but he didn't know what it was, and I guess reverse.
He got Heslered.
Right? Didn't get. You couldn't reverse image search it very well, right, to kind of know what it was. I knew it just from having gone through the Capcom back catalog. Like, what is every box they've ever released? What do they look like? So I kind of knew the piece, and so it's a beautiful piece.
The image is reversed, right, on the box art? No,
I have no idea actually.
Can you pull it up again? Just
unless it's my camera reversed.
Oh no, it's not. Sorry. Yeah,
while you have it up, one thing I like about it is that like the figure's got some really great backlighting from the lights on the cockpit.
Yeah,
it's like the light and shadow on the figure is really nicely done.
What I like about Justin's work is his scale is pretty big. Like, I don't mean the size of the pieces. I mean like how big the figures are within a painting. So like he also did he did Street Fighter toy art and Mortal Kombat toy art, kind of in that 94, 5, 6 kind of period. And just looking at like how big the figures are on the packaging. Like, I guess some of that's a packing decision, but some of it is like within the composition of the painting. How big are the figures? How close to the camera are they?
There's a prominent central figure,
and I like that. And they're impressive to see in person. Love the colors. Really fine detail. One thing I can't remember if it was Justin telling me this himself or talking to another artist that worked for Hamagami Carroll, where even as he got fairly established in his career and set up this, there was a period where he was still doing the last 10% of every painting. So you have all these studio artists, really talented people working on these big projects, but that last 10% coming in with the final touches of the airbrush or the adjustments or anything else needed was coming to him because of how incredibly talented he was. Which is like, I never would have expected something like that. I'm so used to this. Yep, it's assigned to this guy, you paint it. But when it's your firm's reputation on the line and you're winning business and getting more, having that direct involvement, for better or worse, I'd say probably better looking at some of the results. But I'm happy to have, among everything that happened at Galactic, and thankful that the pieces are now out there and in good hands, that I was also able to, bring one into my own collection.
That's great. Congratulations on that. Very nice. I'm not going to be sharing anything. I did pick up some artwork during 2025, some pieces, but for, it's funny, back to secrecy and transparency, but, there's a potential to screw up someone else's deal if I share what I picked up. So I kind of have to leave it at that and pass it over to Ibrahim.
Yeah, that's fine. Before that, you've shared quite a lot on the Facebook group of pieces you're framing, so it's actually really nice to see that. So, you show snippets of it, so it's nice that you're doing that.
Thanks.
So I will say, I will keep plugging our website, our Facebook group, in any appropriate way throughout this conversation. But if you're finding this video and you're not part of our Facebook group, I think it's OVGA Collectors is the facebook.com/group/OVGA Collectors, or just original video game art collectors. Kind of a growing number of members there, but also like Dan, someone who's owned a lot of this artwork for a long time, as he's getting pieces framed, sharing them there in the group. And then, as Ibrahim talked about earlier, the RC Pro-Am piece that recently sent to Dave Marino, new collectors as they get pieces, sharing them. That as much as we talk about here, there's a lot of other discussions and pieces being shared in the group also.
Yeah, I've got one. I've not shared this one before, but I have shared a piece from the artist. It's Masao Koga. I'm probably butchering that. He's a Japanese artist. I shared the Prince of Persia piece, which I actually have up there, the TurboGrafx one before. But I actually, before sort of I show you this piece, I'll just tell you sort of a bit about this. It's not one I bought this year. I bought it, I think, in 2020, end of 2023 or 24. But when I initially reached out to him, he was not interested in selling anything at all. He actually didn't know what he had. So I was just sort of seeking information and just wanted to find out. I'm like, can you just have a look, see what you have? He's like, oh, it's in my storage unit. and pieces are sort of rotting over there. And I'm like, what do you mean they're rotting over there? It's like, oh, it's damp. It's not in the best condition. And I'm like, whoa, dude, can you please go like get them out, see if anything needs preserving, any sort of conservation work, anything like that. They're just going to deteriorate. So he sort of once he saw sort of that I'm actually genuinely interested in this stuff, he actually went digged it out, and unfortunately a couple pieces did have some foxing and damp issues, but the majority of the collection didn't. And I was lucky enough to purchase I think 5 or 6 pieces from him, but the best one I've got here, just give me a sec.
Oh, that's what the white cover was in the background.
Very, very nice, Ibrahim. Very nice.
Look at that framing too. Love it.
Yeah.
So can you guys see that?
Sure can. And why don't you tell the audience what that's for, Ibrahim? I know, but not everybody might.
Thunder Spirits for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
Pop my headphones on.
Yeah.
So I recently framed it just this year, and it's such a beautiful piece. And I actually got the title artwork with it too, which, as Sanford knows, I absolutely love collecting title artwork. So whenever that's available, I just go crazy for it.
Well, we talked about sources of new art. I mean, that's one we didn't talk about is, the international market, really, right? I mean, there you go. You found something internationally.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, it was really difficult sort of trying to pry this off his hands. But once he sort of saw that I was actually passionate about it, I shared sort of what I do. He was just like, you know what? I'm happy for this to go to sort of your collection. And I worked a really good deal with him. And he trusted me. So that was really nice. So yeah, picked this one up and got it framed finally, but it's absolutely stunning. It's a great size. There was some foxing around the edges, but I sort of dealt with that. There was a tiny bit here, but I just decided to leave it. It's sort of oil paint, so it's not going to sort of damage it or anything. I had somebody look at it and they said it's absolutely fine. But yeah, no, this is sort of beauty going up on my wall now.
So what's the size on that? Maybe like 18 inches or something, or?
I think it's a bit bigger than that, probably 20 or so. But yeah, nice. Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, his work is incredibly detailed because he's entirely brushwork, right?
Yes.
Not really any airbrushing, right? And so
no airbrushing. It's just brush.
That look is always impressive. Like, as much as I love the airbrushing and how much of it I have in my collection and how that's kind of the standard, seeing paste that's fully painted by brush like that is it's always a treat.
It is, and I think for this reason, like airbrush can be good, airbrush can be bad. When it's amazing, it's incredible. But because of the fact that there's often deadlines on these pieces, if you were going to paint solely with brush, you had to be damn confident because you didn't have any time to make any mistakes or redo, right? So, I think there's a bit of self-selection there, and that only the best could really go brush only and know they'd meet the deadline and so on.
Yeah, I think
because it's a slower process.
Yeah, and it's even saying airbrush as a generalization. As I've got more of these paintings in hand, there are a few artists that airbrush everything, but that takes a lot of planning, like knowing where every single line is going to go ahead of time, right? Of like the cutting the frisket and laying all the prep work that goes into a truly piece as 100% airbrush. Versus like a Greg Winters would do a lot of airbrushing, but then he'd put a good amount of traditional brush on top of it, like adding streaks and dots and other details that I think probably saved him in the prep time, right?
100%, and I think that's the great majority, right? Is like airbrushed on the color fields, traditional brush on the outlines and accents, pencil crayon in certain points. Like they are, by and large, a mix, really.
Yeah.
But mixed media is like, there's no description I hate more than that, right? Like on a listing, when you see something and it says mixed media, it just seems like the laziest catch-all ever, devised by the auction houses, because it tells you nothing. Like I'd have no issue with descriptions that would say something along the lines of, mixed media, including airbrushed acrylic, gouache by traditional brush, and, prismatic pencil crayon color. Like if it was a full description. But the second there's more than one media, the lazy way to say it is mixed media. It tells you nothing.
I think what gets a little frustrating beyond that kind of a cop out of description is how much that information kind of gets lost over time too.
Totally.
Like, I can recognize that something's airbrushed. I often will assume that it's acrylic airbrush, but I don't really know what they were putting in their airbrush gun, right? And so unless sometimes you can tell more than others, but like realizing that you can airbrush with different kinds of paint. It's like, wow, just saying something's airbrushed doesn't mean shit, right? That's just the tool that was used.
That's like saying it's brushed. You're not telling anybody what you're brushing. On that note, I think we have to wrap up the episode because Ibrahim's having some connectivity issues here. So everybody, it's been awesome seeing you all. Facebook.com groups, OVGA collectors, Facebook.com groups, pinball art. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you guys later.